Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Notes of Defiance. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communication, as well as moderator for this conversation. We are very pleased to be joined by the director of this film, Brian Henderson. Brian is an accomplished filmmaker from Green Bay, Wisconsin, who discovered his passion for visual storytelling at Columbia College, Chicago. For a decade, he showcased his exceptional talent as a cinematographer, crafting poignant moments and compelling narratives in commercial and documentary projects. Hello, Brian, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric.
Okay, let's get right to tell us what was the inspiration behind making this film. We knew the war was going on, but who does that? Who picks up a camera and goes into a war zone and
Uh,
starts filming?
Turns out actually a lot of people, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to make this was the inspiration I received from so many people who were traveling towards danger, looking for ways to help. Um, in February of 2022, when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, I was at home here in Los Angeles watching on TV, and I knew that I was watching what would probably be one of the most important moments of my lifetime. Certainly, so far in my lifetime, this is the most important event happening in Europe. And um, as a filmmaker, as a honestly as a human being who feels connected to a lot of the world, who has traveled immensely, the idea of just watching this event unfold from a distance, and not being there myself to see it firsthand and contribute in some way I could firsthand, really wasn't an option for me. Uh, I think that there's a lot of people in the world who look at great moments through history and they always wonder, well, who would I have been in that time? What would my actions have been? Would I have stood back and watched passively while I tried to have helped? How would I have participated? Um, and then these great moments in our lifetime do occur, and then you have a choice to make of what you're going to do about it. Um, I'm I'm primarily a cinematographer. Actually, I direct very rarely. And so I knew that I wanted to be a part of this story, and do something in Ukraine. I was attached to a couple other documentary projects as a cinematographer, and all of those just kept falling through. And sort of by the end by fall of 2022, I was like, well, if I'm going to make a movie in Ukraine, I'm going to have to do it myself. No one's hiring me to do it. And so I'm gonna have to put it together myself. And so I started building a team, and very small team at first. And we went we made this movie ourselves. Um, it's also in I shoot primarily good amount of documentary, but a lot of commercial work, which I love. I think being a commercial cinematographer is one of the best jobs in the world. I'm so thankful for it. Um, but by and large, that's a very small audience that cares about commercial. You're basically like other cinematographers and directors and some producers like, oh wow, man, great 30-second car commercial or whatever. Like the general public doesn't care. In fact, the general public wants to forget about commercials most of the time. And that's not why I went to film school. That's not why I went to Los Angeles. I come here to make things that people forgot about. I came here to tell compelling stories, to tell stories that connect with the human spirit. And for me as a person, it's a bit soul sucking selling, like makeup or clothes or shoes or whatever it is. Again, fantastic job, but it doesn't necessarily always reflect who I am as a person and things like the values I hold in the world. So I think, to be honest with yourself, you have to go out and find things that you do care about and find ways to contribute, whether you see that as paying penance for your sins of capitalism, or whether you just need to do something good for your soul. So that's the very long answer of why I wanted to make a movie in Ukraine.
No, that's a good answer too. I mean, it's good to take us into the mindset of approaching, a piece of work that you want to do. So when you were actually in Ukraine, give us I believe you filmed for 3 days. What was that like? Was it nerve-wracking? Were you always looking over your shoulder? Give us a sense of what it's actually like filming day to day in a war zone.
Actually, we were there for I think a little over 2 weeks total. Um, so yeah, we filmed for I think maybe we probably did about 10 shooting eight, like 8 or 9 shooting days on this project specifically. We were doing some other things there as well. Um, Honestly, it's a bit I've been in um some conflict zones before. Nothing quite like this. Nothing where the danger level is this high. Um, However, it's so easy to adapt very quickly. It becomes your new normal almost immediately, especially when the other people around you have been living that reality for, 11, when we started this film, 11 months, Ukraine had been, under full-scale invasion by Russia. Um, so when everyone around you is acting like its life is normal, it's very easy to do that yourself. Um, People are out at, they're out at restaurants, they're at bars, and we went out. It's so strange. We went out every night to a restaurant or a bar and hung out and met people and like getting on with life as normal. I mean, it's not. There's air raid sirens and people move to bunkers and bomb shelters or move away from the windows or whatever it is. So everyone's always adapting. There's a curfew in the city. They shut the power off at 10 p.m. Uh, uh, but everyone tries their best to maintain a sense of normalcy. I think it's also you need to recognize the privilege that we have as filmmakers is the ability to disassociate, right? Um, you can look at your monitor right there, and your world exists in those frames, right? That's a privilege that we have is that we can shut out all the things around us and like, hey, we're making a movie. This is my reality, and you feel invincible. So that's really at the end of the day. Once we started going, it was just like making another documentary. There's external noise and things happening, but you're so focused on the task at hand that you sort of forget those things and really focus just on like what you're there to do.
Yeah. You said that there are filmmakers that go into war zones. Did you encounter any other filmmakers? And if so, who were they? Probably there might have been Russian filmmakers too.
I didn't meet any filmmakers in specifically in Kharkiv, but what I did meet a lot of were people who had come from all over the world to help. And that was another one of my inspirations in making this film is, I was seeing so many images on the news of people fleeing the country, of boarding trains to Poland and leaving. But then on my social media, I was seeing the opposite. I was seeing people, whether they were, U.S. veterans going to fight in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, or doctors going to go help out in the hospitals, or people from Europe who just want to go be ambulance drivers or to start NGOs. My great friend Charles McBride, who ended up being a producer on this film, he was a part of our small team in Ukraine. Um, I actually met him through Instagram near the start of the war, because he was just I would say he's just a normal guy, but he's not as extraordinary, man. But in the third week of the war, he just flew to Poland, worked his way into Ukraine, met some doctors in Lviv, and had heard that they wanted to start bringing medical supplies to frontline villages, and they worked their way to Kharkiv and set up what is now an NGO that's the largest supplier of oncology medication in Eastern Europe. And this is just somebody who wanted to help, and is creating a massive impact, massive positive impact. And I think seeing people do those extraordinary things made me realize that it's something that I can do. I can lend my skills towards this cause. How much impact a documentary short has compared to providing cancer medication to people, I don't know. We'll find out. But it's what I could do. It's the tool that I had.
Wonderful. Your main subjects in the film are Ronan and Vera. Tell us how you connected with them and convinced them to actually be a part of your project.
Honestly, it was once we decided to make the film, uh, everything came together really easily. Um, you know, I when I decided that I needed to make a story myself, I still wasn't sure what story I wanted to make. I I knew I wanted to tell a story that wasn't of destruction, but that was about creation and beauty. I was seeing so many images portraying Ukrainians as victims of bombed out cities and frontline combat, and all these things are true, but um, what was absent was the voice of the Ukrainian people themselves, their rich cultural history, their language. And so I wanted to tell a story of the things that I felt was missing. And at the same time, my friend Charles was, he was working in Kharkiv, and he told me, he's like, hey, like, so much of what you're hearing about the war is coming from, Western educated, people living in Kyiv, or people in Lviv. He's like, what we're not hearing from, we're not seeing from, our images from the East. We're not seeing, people in Kharkiv where half of them speak Russian, where that city is much more greatly affected by the war than Kyiv or Lviv is. She's like, you should make a movie in Kharkiv. And I literally just Googled like, yeah, historical buildings in Kharkiv, because we had gotten talking about how Ukrainian culture was under attack. Um, and the first thing that came up was this opera house. And what really struck me is that on the Wikipedia, it said that the Kharkiv National Opera House was an opera house, past tense, and had mentioned how it had been severely damaged or destroyed in the Battle of Kharkiv in March. And then there was no other information. I couldn't find anywhere if this building was standing or it wasn't standing. And I got the email of the opera house manager, emailed him. It's like, hey, what's the deal? Is this opera house still around? Are people still performing? He's like, yeah. It's like, we're still here. People are still doing performances here. Like, a lot of our artists are still here. I was like, this is perfect. I was like, here's the type of story I want to tell. I want to tell a story of the resilience of Ukrainian culture. I want to find, two artists who really embody the Ukrainian spirit, and have decided to stay in the city and continue to perform. And he's like, hey, you should reach out to Roman and Vera. Here's their info. Hit them up on Telegram. See if they're interested. I messaged both of them, and pretty much immediately they got back to me and said, yeah, I'm interested. When are you coming?
So, uh, tell us about the closing sequence. You had Roman dancing in an empty theater. Did you go into this documentary knowing that's how you wanted to close it? Or if you didn't, when did the idea come up, and how did you decide to close the documentary in that way?
That's actually probably the only part of the documentary that sort of ended up exactly as I had envisioned it. Um, that's the first image I had in my head once I started seeing pictures of this opera house and knowing that I had a ballet dancer and a violinist. The first thing that popped in my head was to have this big performance at the end. I knew that's how I wanted to end the film. Uh, as documentary filmmakers, many people know things don't work out the way you want them to. Things are always changing. So I think we sort of had a loose map of what we thought the rest of the film was going to look like. Most of that changed, as it always does in documentary. But the one thing that we were able to hold on to was this ending performance, and it actually worked out better than we thought, because originally we were thinking it was just going to be Vera and Roman. What we were not expecting to have is, a full orchestra, which we were able to get through Vera. Vera introduces to the rest of the people who had decided to stay behind, and they were so generous with their time to come out and put that piece together for us. And so it really ended up, it was the way we envisioned it, but in a lot of ways it was larger and grander than our expectations were.
Yeah, and just to set that up, you probably had no idea how Roman was going to just express himself. It was like he couldn't dance in front of an audience, but his words were so,
Yeah.
potent, in which he just wanted to just talk about how, they could like take away the building, but they can't take away,
Mhm.
this inside of me. and to live on. So it's just beautifully set up. I don't know if that surprised you at all, how well he expressed himself, or
That was actually, on a personal level, the most emotional part of the journey, was that moment where he starts speaking in English. Was also, I think, the most emotional part of the film. Um, it's funny because he spoke very little English. His English is not great. We spoke. I speak terrible Ukrainian. He spoke a tiny bit of English. We had a translator with us. So we were working with our translator the whole time, and he could pick up on some English here and there, but not a lot. And on that last day, that was actually the last day of filming. Um, Funnily enough, not a lot of people realize this, but the orchestra scene and Roman dancing were filmed like 3 days apart. They were not in the same room at the same time, and that's because Roman really injured his back during training. So he had been filming with us and he had aggravated a previous injury. And so when it came time to do this big performance, he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I literally can't get out of bed. My back is like destroyed. Um, and this is already the last day of what we had planned on filming. So our team was really only three people from the US. It was me, it was Charles, who was our producer, and Mac Woodruff, who's my co-cinematographer and also producer on the film. Mac had a hard out. He had to leave to come back to the States for another job. So after we shot that performance, he left. And then I was like, I'm just going to stay behind. I'm going to keep changing my flight from Poland every single day. And I'm just going to stay here until Roman is better. And it was like 3 or 4 days later, Roman's like, all right, I can dance. He's like, I don't feel great, but I can dance. I was like, done. Um, Went to the opera house, filmed that scene. As soon as that scene wrapped, I literally got in a car and drove from there to Lviv and then to Poland, like immediately from the opera house. But he had done this performance, it's all improv. He did a handful of times. It was just him, me, and Charles in that empty opera house. And while he was just catching his breath, he just started speaking in like really good English to Charles. And it's just me and Charles standing side by side, and he just starts expressing these like deep feelings he has. And I just hit record on my camera. My camera's just sitting on my hip. I don't even know if he knew I was recording. And I just hit record and just sat there and recorded like 3 minutes while he gave this like beautiful, moving monologue in like near perfect English. And like all of us were crying by the end. And we're like, where did this come from? But it was like as soon as we did that, I looked at Charles like, dude, that's the end of our movie. I was like, we have the ending. Like it just happened.
that's great. That's a really good piece of information there. We're gonna wrap up in just a moment here, but do you still keep in touch with Ramon and Vera? If so, how are they doing?
Yeah, actually, I just spoke with them the other day. Uh, Vera's, I mean, they're both still performing. They're, in a lot of ways, they're where we left them in the film at the Opera House performing as best they can. Vera's doing a lot of fundraising work to provide medicine to people in Kharkiv, and also to help repair some historical buildings, some sort of educational facilities. We partnered with an NGO to help raise some money through some events in Los Angeles, and we were able to help Veer repair part of the Kharkiv Music College. So that was great. And then yeah, Roman is dancing. He sent me videos of him rehearsing. They have a new performance that is actually, I think, he's probably starting about now. That runs all of September and October. They're not performing in the main stage of the opera house. It's still too dangerous to have that many people in that sort of exposed of a space. But what the opera house is able to do is build. They sort of retrofitted the basement of the opera house into a performance venue. So they're holding performances multiple times per week in the basement. So they no longer need to perform in parks and bomb shelters and parking garages. They're at the opera house, but they're in this sort of makeshift performance venue in the basement. So yeah, they're still doing their thing. I think they will continue to do so.
That's great. That's really great. It's just wonderful to bring us this deep insight into what's going on in people's lives through an act of war. What's next for you? What can we expect to see from you in the near future?
Um, it's hard to say for sure. There's a number of projects I have in development. It's hard to say which one would go first. I will say there is another Ukraine project that I'm really hopeful for. It's based around food, which is two of my favorite things in the world is food and telling stories of resilience. So hopefully we're able to get that going. I think Ukraine is going to be a part of my life for a while. It's funny, I have zero connection to it previous to this project, but through the film festivals and all the wonderful people, all the wonderful Ukrainians I've met, they continue to blow me away with how inspiring of people they are, and how honestly frankly how talented they are. And yeah, I'm honored to keep hopefully collaborating with them and find the return to Ukraine soon.
Brian Henderson, Director of Notes of Defiance. Thank you very much for joining us today. I wish you all the best.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming film festival, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.